The words echoed like gunfire in my ears. "I'm pregnant, but it's not yours," she said, a smug smirk pulling at her lips. My wife. The woman I'd built my future around. As if that wasn't brutal enough, she had the nerve to ask for money right after dropping that bomb. I said nothing. No yelling, no begging. I swallowed the pain and made one decision, one calculated, silent move that shattered her world beyond recognition. Let's rewind. I'll call her Jen. We'd been married for a few years by then, and up until that moment, I would have told anyone we had a strong, happy marriage. We met in college, and from day one, she was magnetic. Confident, fiery, drop-dead gorgeous. The kind of girl who made heads turn in every room she walked into. But what really got me was that she seemed genuinely interested in me. Not just in my looks or my car or whatever other nonsense most girls in that scene cared about. No. Jen paid attention to my goals, asked questions about my dreams, and supported me in ways that felt deeper than surface-level admiration. Back then, I was fully immersed in chasing my business degree, grinding late nights and early mornings, while she pursued education with dreams of becoming a teacher. We clicked fast. By the time graduation rolled around, I was headfirst into launching a consulting startup. It was a risk, yeah, but I was determined. And Jen? She was right there beside me. Those early years were a nightmare of exhaustion. I'm talking 80-plus hour work weeks, clients flaking left and right, rent deadlines giving me ulcers. It was brutal. But Jen held it down. She'd show up at my desk with an energy drink in hand at 2 a.m, whispering encouragement when I was too tired to see straight. She believed in me. Or at least, I thought she did. One night, she came to me with what I thought was the most generous gesture ever. She offered to pause her teaching career to support me full-time while I got the business off the ground. I was floored, moved. I saw it as a rare kind of loyalty, a ride-or-die love story unfolding in real time. But hindsight is cruel. What felt like selflessness then now looks like a strategy, a calculated play. Eventually, the hard work paid off. My company stabilized. The revenue started flowing, and we moved into a beautiful home in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. That's when Jen changed. Slowly, subtly. She got deeply involved with a nearby church. At first, I thought it was great. Community, purpose, values. But soon it became all-consuming. She was leading women's groups, planning church events, and constantly posting faith-laced quotes on social media like she was curating a saintly image. Her feed was a non-stop sermon about morality and family and marital fidelity. But by year 4, something shifted. It started as tiny fractures. She stopped asking about my day. Conversations that used to bounce effortlessly between us now felt stilted, robotic. I'd ask simple things like, "Who came to Bible study tonight?" And she'd respond with vague, clipped replies like she couldn't be bothered. More than once, she'd rush to change the subject. Then she got curious. No, obsessed. With our finances. Suddenly, she was asking questions she'd never asked before. How much did we make this quarter? Or, what's the business valued at now? I thought maybe she was taking an interest in our future, being more financially aware. But that illusion shattered when I noticed her snapping photos of financial statements I'd left on my desk. One night, I caught her in my office. Lights off, phone out, camera shutter clicking. She claimed she was organizing. But no one organizes documents at midnight while secretly scanning them. That's when the tension between us began to suffocate me. Her behavior escalated quickly. Late nights, last-minute weekend trips that sounded increasingly sketchy. She'd leave the house wearing one outfit and return hours later in something entirely different. Her excuse? "Oh, I spilled something." Seemed harmless. Until the pattern became impossible to ignore. I brought it up one evening. I told her I felt like we weren't connecting anymore, that she seemed different, distant. She rolled her eyes, tone flat. You're imagining things. But she couldn't meet my gaze when she said it. Then came the wardrobe change. Not just clothes, lingerie, perfume, heels I'd never seen her wear. Except she didn't wear them for me. They were never part of our nights. She started getting protective of her phone, too, like Fort Knox level guarded. It never left her side. And her stories? They stopped adding up. She'd mentioned going to a certain restaurant with her church friends in a city we'd never visited. She'd show me hotel receipts for girls' weekend, but only one room would be listed. I wanted to believe I was overthinking, stressed from work. But doubt doesn't come out of nowhere. It grows from patterns. One night she came home way past midnight, hair tousled, makeup smudged, with a scent on her skin that definitely wasn't hers, or mine. Something masculine, sharp, and foreign. I kept my voice even. Long night? She didn't even look at me. Just kicked off her heels. Yeah, Bible study ran late. We grabbed dinner after. You know how it is. Except I didn't, because Bible study wrapped at 8, and this wasn't the first time she strolled in like the rules no longer applied. I leaned in slightly, sniffed the air again. Smells like someone spilled cologne on you. That got her attention. She stiffened. Not in guilt, but in hostility. Arms crossed, she bit back. Oh, so now you're paying attention? Maybe if you weren't always buried in work, you'd actually know what's going on in my life. Classic deflection. Shift the blame, twist the narrative. I could have argued. I could have laid it all out. But I didn't. Because I knew how this game played out. She'd cry, say I was paranoid, claim I was neglecting her, flip it on me, and I wasn't giving her that power. Instead, I got methodical. I studied our credit card statements, monitored her location history on the iPad she always forgot to log out of. Pro tip: most people never realize their tablets are tracking their every move. And sure enough, twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, she was parked at the same address across town. A mid-tier apartment complex, always for 2 to 3 hours. Same time, same place. One Thursday, I left work early. I parked across the street and waited. At exactly 2 p.m., she rolled in. 10 minutes later, a guy showed up. Tall, fit, classic gym bro with a tribal tattoo snaking down his arm. It was like watching a bad cliché unfold in real life. They greeted each other with familiarity, comfort. He kissed her cheek. She laughed. I took photos from my car, every frame burning a deeper hole in my chest, but I didn't storm in. Not yet. I needed more than emotion. I needed proof. I had invested everything into that woman. My love, my trust, my future. And now I was sitting in my car, watching her saunter into another man's apartment like she belonged there. She had that same flirty sway in her hips she used to save just for me. The playful toss of her hair, the way she touched his arm as they laughed. It all used to be mine. And now it was being handed to someone else like I never even mattered. Every instinct screamed for me to act, to run up those stairs, beat on the door, and demand answers. But I stayed frozen in place, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Because rage is loud, it's sloppy, it leaves evidence. But revenge is calculated. It's silent, it waits. So I waited. Exactly 2 hours later, she emerged. Her hair was slightly tousled, makeup a little smeared, and that self-satisfied smile still clung to her lips. Then came the kiss, slow, deep, and shameless. They weren't worried about being caught. They weren't even hiding. I took more pictures, my hands steady as stone. Something inside me went cold and still. I wasn't in denial anymore. Jen, the woman I had vowed to spend my life with, was gone. She had been gone for a long time. I found out his name from one of her text threads. She left her phone on the nightstand while she showered. No lock screen, like she still trusted me not to snoop. His name was Eric. He worked at the church she was so obsessed with. A youth pastor, no less. The hypocrisy was suffocating. A man entrusted with guiding young souls, shacking up with someone else's wife behind closed doors, preaching purity in the morning and committing adultery in the afternoon. But I didn't confront her, not yet. I knew better than to move without a plan. Instead, I started collecting screenshots of their flirty messages, photos of their Thursday meetups, and a collection of hotel receipts tucked into the bottom of her tote bag. I even recorded a phone call between them. She was giggling like a schoolgirl, whispering that she was going to leave me soon, that they'd finally be free to live out in the open. Her voice was so casual, so light. But what destroyed me wasn't the betrayal itself, it was the conspiracy. This wasn't a fleeting affair. This was methodical, chilling. She had been orchestrating my downfall for months. In those text threads, she laid it out like a business proposal. He's swamped with work, won't notice a thing. Once I file, I'll ask for alimony. He won't see it coming. She wasn't just walking out. She was plotting a financial ambush. Her new beginning was to be built on the ruins of mine. That's when I realized, if she was preparing for war, I needed to strike first. I contacted my accountant discreetly, after hours, off the books. Just thinking about restructuring a few things, I said, and that's exactly what I did. Over the next several weeks, I started laying down the foundation for my escape. I prepaid the office lease for a full year, paid down any debts that could be used against me. I shifted my salary structure, allocating more funds into company reinvestment rather than personal pay. I upgraded tech, expanded office infrastructure, moves that made sense on paper, but conveniently left me appearing much less liquid. In parallel, I opened a new personal account with a completely different bank. I transferred money in small amounts, not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to build a financial buffer. Every transfer was documented, legal, and above board. I wasn't hiding anything. I was just making sure she wouldn't walk away with more than she deserved. And then, fate handed me a gift. It was a Tuesday. Completely random. I walked in after work and found her lounging on the couch, arms crossed, face smug, like a villain ready to deliver their monologue. "Mike," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "we need to talk." I sat down, nodded. "Sure, what's up?" She inhaled dramatically, then dropped it like a bomb. "I'm pregnant." I didn't even blink. We hadn't shared a bed in months. There was zero doubt in my mind whose child it was. And it sure wasn't mine. But she wasn't done. "It's not yours," she said, eyes on me like she was waiting for an explosion. "I've been seeing someone else. I want a divorce." She said it like she was placing a dinner order. No hesitation, no emotion. 5 years of marriage dismissed in a single breath. My blood boiled. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, feel my muscles tense with the urge to react, to scream, to expose everything. But then it hit me. This was my moment. She had no idea that I already knew. I leaned back on the couch, relaxed. Let a slow, knowing smile stretch across my face. That caught her off guard. She expected fury, maybe even tears. But I gave her calm. Her smile wavered. Then she tried to deliver the final blow. "And just so you know, you'll still be paying me alimony. I gave up my career for you. You owe me." I looked her dead in the eyes. My voice was steel. "Jen, did you really think I wouldn't know about Eric?" She froze. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. I chuckled, low, cold. "Tuesdays and Thursdays, same apartment complex, same parking spot. You couldn't even be bothered to cover your tracks." She opened her mouth. Don't know what you're Don't insult my intelligence, I interrupted. Bible study, huh? Must be some holy scripture if it requires lingerie in hotel rooms. She tried to shift, to backpedal, but I kept going. Eric, the youth pastor. Great choice, by the way. Real pillar of the community. I wonder how his congregation would feel knowing he's knocking up married women while preaching family values. Now she was panicking. Her eyes darted around, her fingers twitching like she wanted to escape her own skin. I leaned in, calm and merciless. How long were you going to play me, Jen? Until you'd milked me for every dime? You and your little boyfriend thought I was too stupid, too busy to notice? She stared at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I stood up, slow, deliberate. Let me make something perfectly clear, I said. You are not walking away from this as the winner. Not even close. You're not taking a single thing from me that I don't willingly let go of, I told her, my voice steady and cold. She tried to cover the panic flickering in her eyes, straightening her spine and masking her fear with a mask of fake confidence. It's the law, Mike. You can fight it all you want, but you'll lose. Her tone was smug, rehearsed, like she'd been practicing this moment in her head for weeks. I gave her the most condescending smile I've ever given another human being, not out of anger, but out of certainty. If you say so, I replied smoothly. She thought she was unleashing the ultimate power play, that by serving me a bitter cocktail of betrayal and legal threats, she was sealing my fate. But the truth was, she had done me a favor. She thought she was ending things on her terms, but all she did was trigger the final phase of a plan I had already set in motion. She had no idea I was already 5 steps ahead. The weeks that followed were a surreal blur. Jen packed up and moved out within days, practically skipping into Eric's apartment. She filed for divorce quickly, citing irreconcilable differences, which in plain English translates to I want to sleep with other men without being called a cheater. I started shopping for legal representation. The first 3 attorneys I consulted might as well have been reading from the same disheartening script. You live in a no-fault state. Those 5 words became a recurring nightmare. Apparently, the fact that my wife was not only unfaithful, but also carrying another man's child held no weight in court. It didn't matter how morally bankrupt her actions were. The law wasn't interested in morals. Still, I didn't stop. Eventually, I found someone who didn't sugarcoat reality. I'll call him Paul. He was blunt, maybe even a little cold, but at least he spoke honestly. Look, man, Paul said, flipping through my documents. You're probably going to have to pay her something. That's just the system. But we might be able to minimize the damage. I handed him my revised financial statements, the ones reflecting all the strategic decisions I'd made over the last month. Paul paused, raising an eyebrow. Interesting timing on some of these business expenses, he noted. You've been busy. He didn't spell it out. He couldn't legally encourage anything shady, but the slight nod he gave me said it all. He understood exactly what I'd done. My moves had lowered my visible net income. My timing was perfect. My actions? Entirely within legal bounds. Well, he continued, this might help shave some dollars off the alimony calculation, but you're still looking at a substantial payout. I knew he was right. But I also knew something the court didn't care about. My ex-wife's entire image was built around the church. And that church? It was her temple of reputation, her golden stage. The law might be blind, but gossip had 20/20 vision. So while I kept my mouth shut in the courtroom, I was carefully positioning dominoes outside of it. When the court date finally arrived, the whole ordeal felt like a bad play. I showed up in my sharpest suit, calm and composed. Jen walked in arm with her expensive attorney, wearing a modest dress and clutching a Bible. She looked like she was auditioning for a spot on some religious reality show, humble, betrayed, misunderstood. The judge looked bored before the proceedings even started. Jen's lawyer took the floor first, launching into a sob story about sacrifice and devotion. According to him, Jen had selflessly abandoned her promising teaching career to support her hard-working husband, tending to the home and sacrificing her own ambitions. It was a performance, and she played the role beautifully. Then, it was our turn. Paul rose to speak, presenting every piece of evidence we had: her affair, the pregnancy, her new cohabitation with Eric. It was all laid bare. But her attorney cut in with a smirk that made my blood boil. "Your Honor, we must remember that we are in a no-fault state," he said, like that erased every sin she'd committed. "While my client regrets the breakdown of her marriage, the law is clear. Marital misconduct is not a consideration in spousal support decisions. What matters here is the financial disparity between the two parties." That was it. That's all it took to invalidate everything she'd done. The lies, the infidelity, the betrayal, none of it mattered. Paul did his best to push back. He emphasized how she had used our marriage as a springboard to secure a financial future with another man. He explained how she wasn't just abandoning a relationship, she was executing a con. But the judge barely lifted his head, listening with the blank expression of someone who'd already made up his mind. When the ruling came, it hit like a sledgehammer. The judge cleared his throat, shuffled his notes, and said, "While the court acknowledges Mr. Walker's concerns regarding his wife's conduct, state law is clear. Marital misconduct shall not influence alimony determinations." Jen didn't even hide her smirk. "Given Mrs. Walker's financial dependency during the marriage," the judge continued, "and her current unemployment, the court awards her spousal support in the amount of $4,500 per month for a period of 4 years, or until she remarries. $4,500 every month for 4 years to a woman carrying another man's child." I wanted to scream, but I kept my face still, because while the judge's gavel was final, the game wasn't over. Sure, I was expecting to get hit with something worse, maybe $6,000 a month. So in that sense, my financial reshuffling had worked. The judge had no clue I had quietly insulated my income, or that my company was poised to rebound after the legal dust settled. Jen and her lawyer didn't know either. As we left the courtroom, Jen leaned close, unable to help herself. "Told you," she whispered smugly. "Should have taken my deal when you had the chance." Then, right in front of me, she dialed Eric. "It's done, baby," she said with a giddy little laugh. "We won. He has to pay. I told you the judge wouldn't care." I said nothing, just watched her walk away like she'd just pulled off the heist of the century. She thought she'd won. But the war was far from over. I mailed the first alimony check right on time. No delays, no complaints. I even sent her a polite email. "Payment sent. Please confirm receipt." She was clearly thrown off. Probably expected anger, sarcasm, some kind of backlash. Instead, I gave her courtesy. I gave her punctuality. I gave her nothing she could weaponize. I played the perfect ex-husband. But that smile on her face wouldn't last. She had no idea what I was preparing next. Jen wasn't just a member of Harvest Community Church. She was its crown jewel. The face they put on the brochures, the voice of their women's ministry. She led marriage retreats, organized family counseling events, and even took the stage during Sunday service to talk about God's plan for holy matrimony. Her father sat proudly as a deacon. Her mother ran the Sunday school, and the entire Walker family had constructed a flawless image of devout Christian perfection, which made what came next even more satisfying, because I knew moment that image cracked, they'd drop her like a cursed relic. That's the thing about religious institutions. They love a redemption story, but they love a scandal more, especially when it comes wrapped in betrayal and hypocrisy. I had been preparing for this move with surgical precision. Every piece of evidence I had collected, time-stamped photos of her and Eric kissing outside his apartment, screenshots of their text conversations dripping with lust, hotel receipts with matching check-in times, even a paternity test confirming the baby wasn't mine. It all went into a sleek, professional folder, and the cherry on top, an audio clip of Jen laughing with Eric, calling her church friends naive little prudes for thinking she was one of them. That one was gold. At the front of the folder, I added a cover letter, formal, respectful, the tone of a concerned believer rather than a scorned ex-husband. To the elders of Harvest Community Church, I regret having to bring this to your attention, but as someone who holds the values of your ministry in high regard, I feel it is my responsibility to inform you of a matter that concerns your leadership. My former wife, Jennifer Walker, who currently leads various ministries within your congregation, has engaged in behavior that starkly contradicts the values your church promotes. During our marriage, she entered into an ongoing extramarital affair, which resulted in a pregnancy. DNA tests have confirmed I am not the father. Jennifer is now cohabiting with the man involved in the affair while continuing to receive substantial alimony from me. Please know this is not written out of bitterness, but from a sincere concern for the integrity of your ministry and its leadership. Respectfully, Michael Walker. I printed it all on high-quality paper, bound it neatly, and delivered it just before sunrise on Sunday morning, slipping the package into the church office mailbox while the parking lot was still empty. Then I went home, made myself breakfast, and waited. Sunday morning came and went. Around 11 a.m., my phone started vibrating like a bomb going off. Texts from mutual friends in the congregation flooded in. Dude, what did you do? Emergency meeting with the elders? Pastor looked furious. Jen is freaking out. I turned off my phone, rolled over, and went back to sleep with the kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. Later that afternoon, I listened to a voicemail from Jen. Her voice, shrill and panicked, cracked through the speaker. I actually had to hold the phone away from my ear. You absolute piece of garbage! How could you do this to me? They kicked me out of the women's ministry. My dad won't even look at me. You've ruined everything. Click. Delete. I didn't need that kind of noise in my life. Throughout the week, more messages trickled in, each one increasingly desperate. Jen's image as the community sweetheart was unraveling at breakneck speed. Her church friends ghosted her. Her parents said they were taking time to pray about everything, which in church speak means we're ashamed and we need to figure out how to save face. Then came the fallout from the Christian school where she volunteered. They asked her not to return. No explanation, no polite conversation. Just a short, awkward email citing recent circumstances. Even Eric started to crack. The Golden Boy youth pastor hadn't expected to catch this much heat. He'd envisioned a quiet affair with a beautiful church girl and a steady stream of alimony-supported romance. Instead, he got a scandal with a side of pregnancy and a community dragging his name through the mud. By Friday, Eric had packed Jen's bags and asked her to leave. The man who once texted her Bible verses before their hookups now decided she was too much drama. A week after I delivered my package, Jen was summoned to a disciplinary hearing with the church elders. I know because she called me in tears, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Mike, please, she begged. They're going to publicly discipline me. Do you know what that means? Yeah, I said calmly. They'll announce it to the whole congregation. They can't do this. Everyone will know. They already do, Jen. That's how church gossip works. She paused. My dad might lose his position over this. My family has been part of Harvest for 3 generations. I let the silence stretch. Then, maybe you should have thought of that before you slept with the youth pastor. She went quiet. Then, in a small voice, "Eric's not talking to me anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "Your dad?" "No, Eric." He said this was too messy, that I lied about the divorce being clean and simple. I couldn't help but laugh. "So your soulmate bailed the second things got complicated?" Shocking. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. "My parents won't take me in. My friends won't return my calls. Sounds like a personal problem. Can I—" She hesitated. "Can I come home?" "Just until I figure things out." The audacity of that request hit me like a slap. "It's not your home anymore, Jen. You gave that up the moment you betrayed me." She broke down into sobs again. Big, heaving ones. "What am I supposed to do?" "Get a hotel," I said flatly. "You're getting alimony, remember? Use it." Click. Was it cold? Maybe. But my reservoir of sympathy was long since dry. The disciplinary hearing took place the following Wednesday. By Thursday morning, the word had spread like wildfire. Jen was no longer welcome in any leadership role. The pastor delivered a lengthy sermon about the sanctity of marriage and the price of sin, never naming her directly, but anyone with ears knew who the sermon was for. Her father took a sudden sabbatical from his deacon responsibilities. Her mother stepped down from Sunday school coordination. Her younger sister postponed her upcoming wedding, which had been scheduled to take place at the church altar. The entire Walker family was quietly ushered into a shadow of shame. Eric, meanwhile, filed for a transfer to another church location out of state. Just like that, he vanished from the community, leaving Jen behind, pregnant, unemployed, and alone. And me? I didn't lift a finger. I just watched. The same people who once praised her as a paragon of virtue were now the ones closing the door in her face. See, in a small religious community, one scandal doesn't just destroy a person, it ripples outward like a stone thrown in still water. Her downfall had consequences I never even imagined. The private Christian school where she taught part-time cited budget constraints and eliminated her position. The principal couldn't even meet her eyes when he gave her the news. One by one, her volunteer roles dried up. The crisis pregnancy center, where she had once counseled young women on life choices, sent her a politely worded letter saying her presence no longer aligned with the center's mission. And I just kept on living. As the church scandal rippled outward, the dominoes continued to fall. Word spread quickly in tight-knit communities like ours. Women from the congregation who once praised Jen for her spiritual wisdom now whispered behind her back. They decided her current lifestyle, her choices, made her unfit as a role model. The charity where she once proudly organized donation drives announced they were restructuring their volunteer program, code for cutting her out without confrontation. One by one, every piece of her carefully curated identity was dismantled, peeled away, until there was nothing left but shame and echoes of who she used to be. And through it all, I kept sending those alimony checks every month like clockwork, clean, legal, unflinching. Not because I cared, but because I wanted her to think that was the extent of my interest. Just business, nothing more. Then, 3 weeks after the story hit the church like a thunderclap, I got a message from an old neighbor. Just one line. "Jen's living in her car." Walmart parking lot. I didn't reply. I didn't ask questions. But that night I drove by. Her silver Honda was there, parked far from the lights, in the corner of the lot like it was trying to hide. I stayed in my car and watched from a distance. The glow of her phone screen flickered through the windshield. She was alone. Slouched, unmoving, a ghost inside her own life. The next day my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "I lost my job," she said. Her voice wasn't angry or manipulative this time. It was flat, dull, worn out. "No tears?" I asked quietly. "Number not anymore?" A pause. The baby's due in 5 months. No one wants to hire a pregnant woman. My parents won't return my calls. I'm just trying to survive. I stayed silent. I've been sleeping in my car, she admitted. I can't afford rent and the car payment on what you send me. Sounds like bad financial planning, I said dryly. She exhaled sharply. Is this what you wanted? To see me completely destroyed? I thought for a moment. I wanted to be honest. Yeah, pretty much. I was stupid, she said, her voice cracking. I made a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't care, I cut in, not out of cruelty, out of truth. She choked on a sob, struggling to finish. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I let a smirk curl across my lips. Cool. Good luck with your new life. And that's when I decided to end this, my way. I was done being tethered to her through court-mandated payments. Time to make the final move. Actually, I said, shifting my tone to something casual, I've been thinking, maybe there's a way we can both move on. Her voice sharpened. What kind of way? I could practically hear the desperation through the phone. I'm tired of sending monthly checks. My business is expanding. I'm opening an office in Singapore and might move there temporarily. Okay? She asked slowly, unsure where I was going with it. Well, international alimony enforcement is complicated, I continued, laying the bait. And I've spoken with a lawyer who thinks we may have legal grounds to revisit the entire settlement based on jurisdictional interpretations. It was all nonsense, of course, but she didn't know that. And in her current situation, she wasn't going to push back. What are you saying? She asked, voice tinged with panic. I'm saying, I replied smoothly, I want to buy you out. One lump sum instead of years of monthly payments. Silence, a long one. I let it sit. Then she asked, barely above a whisper, how much? $90,000, I said. Cash, tax-free. You sign a release form, give up all future claims, and the money's yours today. She had no idea I could afford that 10 times over. The financial moves I made earlier kept a solid reserve untouched, untouchable. To her, $90,000 was a lifeline. To me, it was the cost of peace. That's a lot less than I'd get over 4 years, she stammered. True, I replied, but your lawyer isn't the one sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. And this offer expires in 24 hours. After that, I challenge the alimony ruling, drag us both through court for another year or two, and you get nothing in the meantime. More silence. I could hear her breathing, her thoughts spinning. Can I think about it? You've got until this time tomorrow, I said. Then I move forward without you. I hung up. 2 hours later, she called back. I'll take it, she said, voice hollow. Smart choice, I replied. Meet me at my lawyer's office at 9 a.m. The papers will be ready. She hesitated. Mike, thank you. I nearly laughed. Don't thank me, Jen. This isn't mercy. It's a transaction. The next morning, she showed up on time. She looked worse than I'd imagined. Pale, unkempt, still wearing the same clothes I'd seen in her car. Her eyes were sunken, her hair oily, her presence a shadow of the woman I once knew. My lawyer had the documents ready. Full termination of alimony in exchange for the lump sum. I'd already prepared the cashier's check. She didn't even read the papers thoroughly. Just signed, fingers trembling. Eyes flicking between the lawyer and me. When the check slid across the table, she picked it up like it might vanish. So that's it? She asked. We're done? I nodded. Completely. I don't know what to say. Then don't, I said flatly. I never want to hear from you again. She paused, like she wanted to protest, but instead she stood up, nodded, and walked out. As the door clicked shut behind her, my lawyer turned to me. Most guys wouldn't have given her anything. It was worth it, I said. 90 grand to erase her from my life? That's a bargain. And I meant it. The payments weren't draining my bank account, but they were draining my peace. Every month was a reminder of the betrayal, the manipulation. But now? Now I was untethered. No more court orders, no more bitter emails, no more Jen. And I knew her. That check would be gone in 6 months, maybe less. She'd burned through it trying to reclaim the image she'd lost. Meanwhile, I'd be rising, building, living free. About 6 months later, I ran into her at a gas station. Totally random, unplanned. She looked like she'd been through a war, and maybe, in her own way, she had. Standing at the far pump of the gas station, I almost didn't recognize her at first. Her face was thinner, more drawn, and there were shadows under her eyes like she hadn't slept properly in weeks. She was still pregnant, or maybe pregnant again. I couldn't be sure. And to be honest, I didn't care enough to ask. Gone was the shiny SUV she drove during our marriage, the one she insisted on so she could feel safe and professional. Now she was behind the wheel of an ancient beat-up Civic with peeling paint and a bumper held on with duct tape. The contrast between that and my freshly washed BMW couldn't have been starker. She spotted me as I topped off the tank, and for a second, she froze like a deer caught in headlights. I gave her a polite nod, no smile, no wave, just acknowledgement. She hesitated, then slowly walked over. Her steps were unsure, like she wasn't sure if I'd turn away or bite her head off. There was a heavy, awkward silence before she finally said, "How are you?" I shrugged. "Business is good. Life's good." She nodded, eyes fixed on the pavement between us. That's good." Another long pause. Then quietly she added, "The money's gone." I said nothing, just kept my hands resting on the gas nozzle, listening. "I had to pay off some debt," she continued, "and then rent, food, just life. It went faster than I thought it would." I looked at her for a moment, expression blank. "Not my problem." "I know," she said quickly. I don't even know why I'm telling you this." I finished fueling, screwed the gas cap back on, and opened my car door. Well, good luck with everything. I was halfway in the car when she blurted, "I'm sorry, Mike. For everything. I really am." I paused. Looked at her again. Really looked. Was it satisfying seeing her like this? Honestly? Not as much as I'd imagined. I didn't feel triumphant or giddy. Just finished. The rage was gone. The pain had been processed. All that was left was indifference. "Too little, too late, Jen," I said. Then I got in my car, closed the door, and drove away. I haven't seen her since. Things have been looking up for me. About 6 months ago, I met an amazing woman. Smart, ambitious, sharp as a blade, and absolutely no time for games. She runs her own marketing firm, manages her own money, and respects herself, and me, in ways Jen never could. We started slow, took our time, but 3 months ago, we moved in together. No rush on marriage, once bitten, twice shy, and all that. Still, I can actually see it happening one day. With her? It wouldn't feel like a trap. It'd feel like home. She's the real deal. I try not to think about Jen. I don't check up on her. Don't go looking for updates. But in a town this size, word finds its way to you eventually. Mutual acquaintances still drop little tidbits now and then. Unprompted, of course. The 90 grand I gave her? Gone in less than 4 months. Apparently, she used some of it to pay off credit card debt I hadn't even known existed. Found herself a cheap apartment. And burned through the rest trying to hold on to a lifestyle she couldn't afford. Same old Jen, living beyond her means and acting shocked when the money dried up. She had the baby, a boy. Eric, from what I hear, is legally responsible for child support, but no one's surprised that he's always behind on payments. He moved to Ohio and disappeared into some obscure ministry role. Guess his spiritual calling didn't include parenting. Jen tried to get her teaching license reinstated, but her reputation clung to her like cigarette smoke. No Christian school wanted the baggage, and public schools wanted recent experience she couldn't provide. Last I heard, she was working at a call center, scraping by on slightly more than minimum wage. But the real damage? That hit her where it hurt the most. Her family and her standing in the church. Her parents eventually forgave her, but it took nearly 8 months of radio silence. And even now, their relationship is strained. They help with the baby occasionally, but never miss an opportunity to comment on her life choices or remind her that actions have consequences. Her sister keeps a respectful distance, terrified that Jen's reputation might spill over and stain her own standing in the church community. Jen tried rejoining the church as a regular member, but even that didn't go well. They let her attend Sunday service, sure, but she's banned from leading anything ever again. No more women's ministry, no more retreats, no more recognition. She sits alone in the back pew, slips out the side door before the final prayer, invisible to the community she once ruled. That's the real irony. She once stood on stage preaching about marital fidelity, about submission and sacrifice. Now she's an unspoken cautionary tale. They don't name her from the pulpit, but everyone knows. A friend of mine told me she's been saying she regrets it all, that she wishes she'd worked on her marriage instead of chasing something else. I'm sure she believes that now, but hindsight doesn't fix broken trust. Regret doesn't rewind time. As for me, I'm thriving. My business has never been better. My relationship is strong, and I've started doing things I used to only dream about. I got my pilot's license, took up mountain biking. I even started learning how to play guitar, something I always said I'd do someday. Turns out, sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best version of your life. You just have to be willing to let the fire burn down everything that no longer serves you and walk away without looking back. Oh, and if there's one final piece of advice I'd give to anyone navigating a betrayal like mine, it's this. Document everything. Take screenshots, save emails, back up your phone. You never know when a simple text or time-stamped photo might become your lifeline. It might not change the court's decision in a no-fault state, but knowledge is power. And when someone tries to turn your life upside down, power is the one thing you'll never regret having. Peace out.